Well, everyone, I'm back for another review. And as if for old nostalgia's sake, I'm doing a review of a film that's been out for over a month now. But A Quiet Place Part 2 has been a film I've been looking forward to since my senior year of high school. I still remember early last year when the first trailer dropped and I was looking forward to it to go see it with all my friends. And then the pandemic happened and everything got cancelled. But after a year and finally the end of quarantine, we finally get to see the return of 2018's horror masterpiece on the big screen. But since talking about the long-awaited sequel wouldn't really make much sense without talking about the predecessor, why not go back and talk about the original film that started it all, and that started off this soon-to-be trilogy at this point. So, without further ado, A Quiet Place, directed by John Krasinski, was a surprise 2018 horror hit that came out earlier in the year, which was a classic survival horror film with a twist, where the main characters were not allowed to speak throughout most of the movie, making it a silent film experience of the modern era like no other has ever seen. I got to see it that summer of that year with my parents at home. So, without further ado, all these years later, after rewatching it again like 2 times already at this point, here's what I thought about the movie. It's really rather fascinating to think that it's already been over 3 years since the original film came out. I still remember back when I was still barely a sophomore, and it was 2017, I believe November of 2017, we went to go see the premiere of Thor Ragnarok. I still remember that first teaser to come out in theaters, and I just couldn't believe it. It was just such a unique experience that I've never had before in theaters. A silent film. And for the trailer to show there, most of the characters were having little to no dialogue, the suspense of it, the tensity of it, the incredible editing, the stunning yet terrifying cinematography of it was just an experience like I'd never had before in theaters. I was so eager to watch it. And when I finally got to see it the summer of that year, I saw what the hype was about. The film's storytelling is like a throwback to the silent era of the 1920s and before, with films like Charlie Chaplin's Modern Times and The Kid, where because of their not being in the technology to have dialogue, they were forced to express themselves and tell the story visually in the best way they possibly can, with visual cues of what was happening throughout the story, which A Quiet Place does geniusly, with one of my favorite scenes of the entire movie being the very first 10 minutes, the intro sequence, when you learn for the first time about this world and the state of humanity, or at least the state of their small town, and how this family survives. From the lack of anything being around the store where they're going for supplies, and the remains of cars, and a destroyed town with things all over the place. And the way the family communicates is by being nothing but sign language. American Sign Language to be exact, which apparently one of the female actresses in the film was actually a deaf person, so she actually would teach the cast sign language, which is just absolutely fascinating to learn about. The entire film was just a near perfect experience. However, for the finale, if it wasn't for that goddamn finale, where finally when they figure out how to kill these damn creatures, and it's that big shock and reveal moment where they finally realize that these monsters are too vulnerable, that nothing in this universe is invincible. And then finally, when it seems that we're going to start to see more action and to see them finally stand up to these creatures, they have a sudden fade to black, clearly setting up a sequel to the film. Like, I understand they were obviously going to do it, and especially after the incredible success that the film was, being one of the most successful films of earlier that year. I just don't understand why they had to just do such an obvious setup for a sequel when they could have just simply ended it in so many other ways. It's just something that always bothered me so much whenever I watch the film. I get it that it's supposed to be a little suspenseful to see if they live or not, but my god, once they just figured out the weakness to it, it's just... However, admittedly, a little disappointing finale is not going to take away the 90% of the film. 95% that was just a near incredible visual and storytelling experience that kept you on the edge of your seat the whole way through and kept you invested in these incredible characters the whole way. Whenever you lose a character, you're bawling your eyes out and just in utter shock. Whenever you see these characters succeed or learn more about them, you learn to deeply care about these characters and want to see them succeed in this world, want to see them survive. And that's what great horror should do at its core. So after 3 years later of such an incredible masterpiece to come out and see so many films try to copy it, like Netflix's Bird Box, I think it's safe to say that A Quiet Place's influence is not going anytime soon, which leaves me to give Quiet Place Part 1 a 10 out of 10. One of the greatest horror films I've ever seen, and one of the most unique horror films I've ever seen, especially of the 2010s. And the way it tells a near pure visual story with little to no dialogue and still keeping you invested in these characters and on the edge of your seat the whole way through is the magic of what films were made for. John Krasinski and the entire crew should be incredibly proud that they could pull off such a masterwork of film and such a unique way of storytelling. So after such an incredible release and reaction to the first film, I can't imagine the stress that Krasinski and the crew had to pull off a sequel to this one. And things probably didn't help when everything just had to be put into halt after the pandemic. But as mentioned earlier in the video, after an entire year, the film finally was able to come out just last month, and I finally got to see it last week with all my friends in theaters. It's been a while since I've seen my friends too, so this was very exciting movie to go check out, especially after the incredible positive reception that came out for even some of my favorite critics. And after finally getting to watch it in theaters, guys, I can proudly say A Quiet Place Part 2 is just as incredible of an experience as the original. Everything in this film, once again, from the cinematography to the editing to the performances to even the score, something I didn't even realize that was so incredible the first film until I got to see the sequel in theaters with those giant surround sound speakers. But the film doesn't just copy from what made the first one already so good. It does bring surprising a lot of new things into the film, and very well, helping mainly expand the universe of A Quiet Place and learn more about the past of these characters and what they've been through before we saw them in the original film. And how were things like when the attacks happened and the aliens came from outer space, and if anyone was even ready for it. They weren't, spoiler alert, but we even get to learn a lot of the family and friends that these characters had before the apocalypse and see how they're doing during all of this with the new characters into the film that continues to explore the tragedy and hardships they faced through with already the 2 years that they've been dealing with in this apocalypse, and to show how truly devastating this entire apocalypse has been for everyone. And as I mentioned, every single performance in this film was absolutely incredible, with every character really getting a chance to give their standout performance, with Emily Blunt and Millicent Simmons being some of my favorites, especially Millicent Simmons, over once again the fact that, as mentioned from the first film, that she was the deaf character who was actually deaf in real life, that mainly communicates through sign language. And it's absolutely incredible to see that for someone that can't actually speak human languages like us, can still give such a captivating performance and still just be absolutely endearing and lovable throughout the entire film without speaking a single actual word. Almost everything in this film was just as incredible as the first one, and could have even been just as good, where I could have given another 10 out of 10 and being one of those few perfect sequels. However, the middle act does lack a bit. It's specifically the middle act when some new characters are equally introduced. However, who are they? Where do they come from? We don't know, because they die in 10 minutes from an attack from the aliens from outer space. They're never brought up again throughout the movie. It just makes me wonder why even introduce them. However, that disappointing and confusing middle act cannot take away from the absolute constant edge and excitement I felt throughout the entire film. Watching it, keeping me invested in these characters, keeping me terrified of every single 5 minutes when there's another attack or the possibility of one, to the film exploring themes, once again, of survival, of tragedy, to even now, surprisingly, this one of actual hope for humanity in these characters' struggle to find a new sanctuary where they could all hide and live in peace. It just keeps you invested throughout the whole way that, honestly, the middle act, as funny as it was for my friends and I, where these characters were never brought up again, you just can't help but still have an absolutely incredible time watching this film. In conclusion, despite the confusing middle act, with its absolutely incredible characters, breathtaking cinematography, absolutely just groundbreaking sound design, and just impressive score and editing, it's films like these that reminds me of what I love so much about the movie theater experience. It was such a joy to see my friends again, first off, after so many months of just working and having mental breakdowns in my house, but seeing such an incredible film that just was a giant slap in the face of a reminder of why I love movies so much. It's films like these of just honest creators and an honest crew that just wants to tell the best story they possibly can. And even with a few hiccups along the way, you just can't help but give them praise of an incredibly entertaining and inspiring film that this story was. This is horror at its finest. It's not as good as the original, but my God, it's still just a near incredible experience as the first one was. I'm going to give A Quiet Place Part 2 a 9 out of 10. This is the horror film that everyone should check out this summer. Especially now that it's still in theaters, please go check this one out with theaters. Take your family, take your friends, take your girlfriend or boyfriend if you can. This is the first summer that we have that we're not in quarantine, especially if you've been vaccinated. Please enjoy to the max. So guys, that was my combo review of A Quiet Place Part 1 and 2. What did you guys think of both movies? Did you guys love the original as much as I did? Were you guys disappointed or just as satisfied over the sequel? Did you guys get to see it in theaters? Please let me know, because honestly, I always love to read the comments down below of what you guys think about these movies, or even just about any film in general. Are you guys thinking they're going to make a third one? I think it's pretty obvious they're going to make a third one. Even the ending kind of hinted that. But either way, guys, it's such a joy to be back again doing these reviews. I'm honestly so glad that I'm finally enjoying this summer again, watching incredible movies with my friends, and I just hope I get to enjoy it as much as possible and start making more content for you guys. Because mentioned in the last video, I wasn't joking. There's a lot new stuff coming. And I finally got my shit together to realize that that's what I should be focusing on. Making new content for you guys. And also college. I'm going to my second year of college by the end of this year, so, should really be looking forward to that. God, I didn't even realize that. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a lovely day. See you guys.